regrading the Minnesota Vikings 2020 draft class. After we're 1 year in, it's still saying a lot. I mean, these guys have only played for 1 year and there's a lot left of their career, but we're going to be regrading this class. Now, before the season, I graded all these draft picks, how I felt that they were about like on a A to F basis kind of grades. I graded the entire draft class, and it was a very good draft class from the Minnesota Vikings. And we knew this after they drafted all their players. We knew how good this draft class was, and far better than the 2 years prior. Vikings did not have a great 2 years of draft class, but this one was beautiful. Great year for the Minnesota Vikings, and we're going to be regrading every single pick on this episode. Starting at the first one, Justin Jefferson. Initial grade, I gave him an A-. Now, the reason why I gave this Justin Jefferson pick was an A- was because I didn't feel... Now, I knew Justin Jefferson was a great player, of course. I knew he was elite coming out of LSU, one of the best wide receivers in the class, 5th off the board, and obviously right now wasn't only the best Minnesota Vikings of the draft class, but the best rookie in the entire NFL. Now, is he better than Justin Herbert? No, because he doesn't have as much talent as Justin Herbert does because he is a quarterback. But once again, with all the records Justin Jefferson broke, I do think he should be the NFL League Rookie of the Year. So my initial grade was an A- because I felt that the best spot the Vikings could have did was trading up to get Tristan Wirfs. I felt this was the best spot that the Vikings could have, or the best decision the Vikings could have made would be trading up to get Tristan Wirfs because of how much we needed an offensive tackle and how much it would have meant for the Minnesota Vikings team. Now, of course, as great of a season as Tristan Wirfs has had, Justin Jefferson has just had a better season. That's why now I give him an A+. This was the best pick of the Vikings draft class and the best pick of possibly the last decade by the Minnesota Vikings, as Justin Jefferson broke so many records and now hopefully will be our wide receiver 1 for the next few years. Great pick for the Minnesota Vikings. Also, in the first round, 31st overall, the Minnesota Vikings drafted Jeff Gladney. This was after trading down with the San Francisco 49ers. They drafted Jeff Gladney, who they would have took at their initial 25th pick. So it was a great move by the Minnesota Vikings, and that's why I gave it A-. Now, we knew going into this 2020 draft class, or this 2020 draft, the Minnesota Vikings needed cornerbacks. It was the biggest need for the Vikings last offseason, and still is a pretty big need, and they really went heavy with cornerbacks this last draft class. And my initial grade was also an A-. I felt that this could have been a little bit better, but once again, knowing what we know today, I give this one a C now, but that doesn't mean that it was a bad draft pick. Now, I give it a C simply because it was just an average pick. I mean, he was drafted in the first round. He didn't look like a first round talent, but he did look like a rookie cornerback out there. I mean, he missed a lot of tackles. He didn't break up as many plays as I would have loved to see. But once again, with his athletic ability, he can be a great nickelback in the NFL. So I give it a C now, but really, I'm still very hopeful for Jeff Gladney's career, and I think he's going to have a great career, even though I did just move that down to a C. In the second round, the Minnesota Vikings, with the 58th overall pick, drafted Ezra Cleveland. I gave this pick a B+ because I was so happy that the Minnesota Vikings were going to move on from Riley Reiff. And that did not happen. The Minnesota Vikings did not move on with Riley Reiff. And the reason why they didn't move on with Riley Reiff was because I don't think Ezra Cleveland looked ready. Riley Reiff's contract held back the Minnesota Vikings, and I thought they were going to use Ezra Cleveland as his replacement. Now, we saw a lot of Ezra Cleveland in the 2020 season. We only saw him as a right guard, though. When Riley Reiff got COVID week 17, the Minnesota Vikings used Rashad Hill instead. And for that reason, I give it a D. For a second-round draft pick, I would love to see a lot more from an offensive lineman, especially a player like Ezra Cleveland. There is something with the Minnesota Vikings. They just can't draft offensive linemen. Now, I know it's just his first season. But once again, we've only seen him at right guard. We haven't seen him as left tackle. And I think the reason why we haven't seen him as left tackle is because I don't think he's ready. We don't see him play in practice, and I don't think Ezra Cleveland is ready. Minnesota Vikings cannot draft offensive linemen. I don't know what is with that. And this is why a lot of people say in the first round, the Minnesota Vikings have to go offensive guard. And I don't disagree with you. I feel like because offensive guard is the biggest need for the Minnesota Vikings, and going guard in the first round would be pretty good, or with the first pick, even if they trade down. Going guard in the first round would be pretty good move for the Vikings. But once again, I'm not very confident. I don't think the Vikings can do it. I don't think going guard in the first round is the best decision for the Vikings because we can't draft offensive tackle or offensive lineman. Rick Spielman cannot draft offensive linemen. It just doesn't work. It never works. And this is why I can't do it. I would love to go guard in free agency and just go possibly defensive tackle in the first round. Probably not cornerback, but maybe cornerback somewhere on defense, maybe safety in the first round, something like that. 14th overall safety is very, very big. You can just go in the second, third round with that pick. Anyways, with our fourth pick in the third round, the Minnesota Vikings, 89th overall, drafted Cameron Dantzler. And my initial grade was a C. And now this is an A+. Cameron Dantzler was the best defensive rookie for the Minnesota Vikings and one of the best defensive rookies in the entire NFL. Cameron Dantzler had an excellent season, and I love to see it because Vikings, we have been so bad at cornerback. Vikings have been so bad at cornerback. Now, my initial grade was a C, and this is not a very good grade for the Vikings. Or for Cameron Dantzler, this draft pick. A lot of people said this was the steal of the draft. I felt Cameron Dantzler, he just doesn't look like an NFL player. He was not very lengthy. I saw him at the combine. He did not look great. And that's the reason why he fell this far for the Minnesota Vikings to take. And now going into this next season, he can be our cornerback too. And this is great because Jeff Gladney is not ready. Jeff Gladney is not ready. And then Mike Hughes, obviously very injury prone. Hopefully Cameron Dantzler can be a lockdown corner. I don't see it happening anytime soon. But in a couple years, he might be one of the best. He might even make a Pro Bowl. I'm very happy for what I see from Cameron Dantzler, especially with all of these departures, with Xavier Rhodes leaving, with Trey Waynes leaving, with Mackenzie Alexander leaving, Mark Fields, with Holton Hill leaving. We have all these cornerbacks that are no longer on the team, and we are left with a bunch of practice squad guys. So I love to see a third-round draft pick like Cameron Dantzler come out and have such a great rookie season. And I give this draft pick an A+++ because the Minnesota Vikings needed this. We needed a good cornerback because this is what we deserve for a long time of having bad cornerbacks. Xavier Rhodes was great for a couple years, or well, more than a couple years, I guess you can say for about 4 years. Obviously, before that, we have Antoine Winfield. So we've had a pretty good history of cornerbacks. It's just in a long time. Feels like a long time since Xavier Rhodes had been good. Anyways, in the fourth round, Minnesota Vikings, 117th overall, drafted DJ Wonnum. If I can find this here. Nope. Yeah, here we are. Okay. They drafted DJ Wonnum. My initial grade was a B, and I'm going to stick with that and still go with a B. DJ Wonnum, I am very happy for what I see from DJ Wonnum. He showed so much potential in 2020. As you can see here, this was when he had that game-winning fumble against the Green Bay Packers on Aaron Rodgers. I guess you can say DJ Wonnum the game. I already made that pun on this channel, but I'm doing it again because it's a good one. Anyways, still a B. I feel like this is a very good draft pick. Taking defensive ends and defensive tackles in the fourth round is about the best thing you can do in the fourth round, especially with a defensive coaching staff like the Minnesota Vikings have. Taking defensive linemen in the fourth round is a great move, and I loved this draft pick. 117th overall out of South Carolina, drafting DJ Wonnum, and I think he's going to have a pretty good career with the Minnesota Vikings. And in all honesty, he might start the 2021 season. Now, is he ready to start in the NFL? I don't think so. I haven't seen enough from him. Now, of course, the things that we have seen from him have been great. I mean, he's had a few sacks in the NFL so far, and what we've seen from him has been great. But once again, is he ready to start? Is he ready to be a starting defensive end? Now, if we have Danielle Hunter come back, and we don't take anybody in the draft who's ready in the first couple rounds, or we don't take someone in free agency, I think you should start DJ Wonnum in the 2021 season because he is the best defensive end that we got. If Danielle Hunter comes back, of course, he's the second best. But once again, he is the second best defensive end that we got. I don't think Ifeadi Odenigbo is better than him. I think he's better because of how slow Ifeadi is. Now, Ifeadi's a pretty good pass rusher, and very slow, though. Very slow guy. And that's the reason why I think they should use him as an interior pass rusher on third and long, on fourth and long, third and fourth downs. I think they should use Ifeadi Odenigbo on the inside, no longer as a defensive end, because what we saw from 2020 was horrific. I don't want to see him as a starting defensive end anymore, or Jalen Holmes, none of these guys, or Hercules Mataafa. Our entire defensive end group is just bad without Danielle Hunter right now. And I think DJ Wonnum is going to develop into the NFL beautifully, and I am happy with that draft pick. Such a good draft class for the Vikings. This makes me so... There's so many players that showed so much potential in 2020, and I love to see it. Okay, now with our next one, I think we're here now. Yep, James Lynch. Okay, my initial grade, I gave this one an A. James Lynch, drafted 120th overall out of Baylor. Now, this another fourth-round draft pick where it's a defensive lineman, and with a coaching staff like Andre Patterson, like Mike Zimmer, taking defensive linemen in the fourth round is about the best thing you can do. Initial grade, I gave this one an A. I don't know why I really gave it an A, as he is just a backup. I don't know why I gave it an A. Once again, I'm moving it to an A- because I felt like an A was a bit of an overdraft. Very excited for James Lynch. He did not see a whole lot of snaps in 2020. I hope to see more, especially going forward with Shamar Stephen, as it will likely be his last season in the NFL, with Jaleel Johnson likely leaving. And Michael Pierce maybe not playing another season. I don't know. I hope to see a lot more from James Lynch. And once again, moving in with more rookie defensive tackles, there's going to be a lot of people playing for the starting role. Maybe James Lynch will get it, maybe not. However it goes, I'm very excited for James Lynch's career. 4th round, 132nd overall, the Minnesota Vikings drafted Troy Dye. I gave this pick an A+. Now, Troy Dye was my favorite draft pick. In the 4th round, there is so many linebackers that have fell to the 4th round because there's so many linebackers in every draft class that taking linebackers in the 4th round, they look like you took them in the 2nd round. Now, Troy Dye has so much potential. He was 132nd overall pick out of Oregon. I gave this pick an A+ because I felt it was a huge need for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, of course, we have Eric Kendricks. He's our clear starting interior or inside linebacker, and Troy Dye is a very good backup. And I wanted to see Troy Dye possibly play for Eric Kendricks' role. Now, I felt Troy Dye was really going to. The only reason why I give this pick now a B is because of his injuries. I felt if Troy Dye did not get injured, he would have shown that he can be a starting inside linebacker in the NFL. And he was only a 4th round draft pick. I felt he could have shown that he would be ready to be that starting inside linebacker. Once again, injuries held him back, and I have to give it a B because I still have so much high hope. I still have high hopes for Troy Dye in the NFL. And if Eric Kendricks does get injured again and Troy Dye comes out there, you will see he is ready to be a starting inside linebacker. Hopefully. Now, once again, they can still use him possibly as an outside linebacker. He's just so much better into coverage, and he can rush the passer on the inside. And I feel like it's a bit of a reach. He's not a great pass rusher, but once again, into coverage, he's a very good linebacker in coverage. And I would love to see more from Troy Dye. Okay, also in the 5th round, our first 5th round pick, 169th overall, the Minnesota Vikings drafted Harrison Hand out of Temple. Once again, I've said it and I'll say it already, the Minnesota Vikings needed cornerbacks. This was the third cornerback the Minnesota Vikings drafted in this class. 1st round, they took Jeff Gladney. 3rd round, they took Cameron Dantzler. 5th round, they took Harrison Hand. And they didn't draft Harrison Hand to play cornerback. They drafted him to be a special teamer guy because the Minnesota Vikings needed so much help on special teams. My initial grade, I gave this a C, and now I'm going to have to go with a C+. So not much of a move adjustment there, but this was a needed pick for the Minnesota Vikings. It was not best player off the board. It was a needed pick as the Minnesota Vikings really struggled in special teams in the 2019 season and in the 2020 season even more. The Minnesota Vikings really drafted a lot of, really focused on special teams, the 2019 draft, or the 2020 draft after the 2019 season, and they will do once again this draft. So they didn't draft Harrison Hand to be a cornerback. They drafted him like Chris Boyd in the 2019 draft class. They drafted him as a cornerback, but to be a special teamer guy. And we saw a lot from Harrison Hand as both special teamer and as a cornerback because of how many injuries we had on the cornerback position. We saw a lot of Harrison Hand this last season, and I'm pretty happy with what I see. I mean, he's played a solid season. He did get an interception. I think it was against Drew Brees. He did get an interception that was just basically given to him. He did have some blown coverage as well. So he doesn't look like a good cornerback, but on special teams, you can add depth to the secondary, and you have a player who can play on special teams. So I give this pick a C+. Not a bad pick at all. Okay. We're only reviewing rounds. I didn't mention, we're only reviewing picks that were drafted in the rounds 1 through 5, because I feel like picks in the 6th and 7th round, if they make that practice squad, it was even a good pick. Because that's basically what you draft in the 6th and 7th round is players that you think can possibly make the active roster or be on the practice squad their starting season. So in the 5th round, 176th overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings drafted KJ Osborne out of Miami. Okay. My initial grade was a B+. The reason why I went with a B+ on KJ Osborne was because this was a huge need. Because the Minnesota Vikings were so bad on special team return game, it was ridiculous. We had Amir Abdullah who's coming off of a horrific season. Once again, he had a bad season as a special teams returner. And then we had CJ Ham even be a special teams returner. Didn't look good at all. Chad Beebe injured basically the entire season. We needed someone who can be a starting special team returner. And that's why the Minnesota Vikings drafted Cameron Dantzler. I mean, that's why the Minnesota Vikings drafted KJ Osborne. Well, that didn't go well at all. KJ Osborne had a horrific rookie season with the Minnesota Vikings. They drafted him as a wide receiver, but to be a special teams returner because we really needed that role filled as the Minnesota Vikings had a bad season. And okay, here, let's take a look. The fact that the only photo I can find of him in the Vikings uniform was him fumbling the ball against the Dallas Cowboys just shows you how bad his season was. And the reason why I give this pick a D, I don't give this pick a F, is because it was only a 5th round draft pick. It was a good move for the Vikings to take a special teams returner in the 5th round. And even if he doesn't work out in the NFL, it wasn't an F. I don't think so, because he was drafted in the 5th round. And once again, if he doesn't make this the roster next season, then it was an F, obviously, if he can't make the roster next year. But once again, if he even makes the active roster next year, I don't think it's a F. I think it'll just stay as a D. Just not a very good pick at all for the Minnesota Vikings. Hopefully we can see him possibly as a wide receiver. Now the Vikings, we need wide receivers, because with KJ Osborne departing, our wide receiver 4 is BC Johnson, and you can possibly play for his role as well. KJ Osborne, we didn't see him play very many snaps on the offense. We just saw him as a special teams returner, and by the end of the season, he was no longer our starting special teams returner, and you hate to see it. I gave this pick a B+ because of how much we wanted to see this happen. We needed this move to be made, and Rick Spielman made it, and it was a good move, I felt. But once again, knowing what we know today, KJ Osborne does not look good. He doesn't look good at all, and it doesn't even look like he'll be on the active roster next year for the Minnesota Vikings. Hopefully we can see a better season from KJ Osborne. I mean, if he can make the active roster next year, this will still be pretty good, giving him another chance, especially with how bad our special teams return game is in general. I mean, Amir Abdullah does not look like a starter. He's a free agent now. He might not even be back. Who will be our special teams returner? I mean, Chad Beebe will be our starting punt returner. That's not very good right there. Hopefully we could see Mike Boone play some more. We saw him play as a kick returner in preseason, in the 2019 preseason. We haven't seen him since then. I don't know what happened with Mike Boone. I mean, he played very well. I don't know why he's not our starting special teams returner, especially how bad we're looking right now. KJ Osborne, though, once again, not a good move, and I give this one a D. So overall, a very good draft class. A very good draft class. The only 2 picks that I gave bad grades to was KJ Osborne and Ezra Cleveland. Outside of that, this was a very good draft class, highlighted by, of course, Justin Jefferson, Cameron Dantzler, and Jeff Gladney. Those 3 players are going to be with the team for some time, showed a lot of promise, and DJ Wadham and James Lynch and Troy Dye showed promise, and I hope all of these guys have great seasons with the Vikings, or great careers with the Vikings. And with all these draft picks, great draft class for the Vikings, possibly the best out of the last draft, out of the last decade. And I give this overall this is a B. And the only reason why I give this one a B, well, I just averaged all the grades that I gave. The only reason why this is a B was because it was weighed down pretty heavily by the KJ Osborne draft pick and by the Ezra Cleveland draft pick, which I was not huge fans of. Well, as of today, I'm not a huge fan of. They were needed moves for the Vikings. We needed a special teams returner, and we needed a new left tackle. So overall, it's a B, but once again, some great players that were drafted in the 2020 draft class, and this is regrading the Minnesota Vikings 2020 draft class as we are entering the 2021 draft 2021 offseason, where the Minnesota Vikings will be making a lot of moves, and we will be covering everything that happens, previewing every moves the Vikings make, reviewing every moves the Vikings make on this podcast. So be sure to subscribe, be sure to like the podcast, be sure to follow, rate the podcast, do whatever. But if you're interested in Minnesota Vikings football content, be sure to stick around this offseason.